Chapter 7, Farrington. So maybe you've come to understand that this is now Chapter 7 of a book, and the book is called Farrington, and it's named after a friend of mine called Tony Farrington. And Tony Farrington is short for Anthony Farrington. Now, the reason why this book is called Farrington is really for no reason. It's just sometimes you have to give a book a name, you have to give something, it's like a song. Sometimes you can't write a song on the theme of hayfields and harvests or something. Sometimes a song just comes out of your subconscious and you don't really know what to call it, but then it starts to kind of coalesce and gel, and then you do know what to call it, but you don't really, it don't come out like a product from a factory where they know what they're making, and they try to kind of put all the materials together to get it to come out in a package, just say for example like a tin of soup, but at one time when they were making soup, they didn't know how to put it in a tin, so they had to think of something. And really it's the same with books, it's all a kind of artistic process. We don't know what's going to happen next, we don't know what we're going to do, and that kind of makes it exciting, unpredictable. So yeah, this is chapter 7, and chapter 7 is chapter 7. So I've got to kind of move it on now from, let's say, me and Scouser we're in Paris, and then we're getting a train down to the south of France. And that was very interesting. It's part of my life. We did get on one of those TGVs, train à grande vitesse, TGV. So I might call this chapter 7 TGV, because that's what they do, they're writing chapters and they're just kind of making them sound flashy, make them sound interesting. And what you notice about a lot of things, they're not thematic. So let's say Dickens is thematic. If he writes Great Expectations, it is about great expectations. It's about more than, it's about exaggerated expectations, really. So he had to give it a title, but really that don't concern him, the title. The thing is, he's got to somehow write the story. And what the story of that book is about him going to London from the countryside, and thinking of himself as a bit of a local yokel who isn't too clever, and going and feeling a little bit out of it, a bit not accepted because he's not enough of a snob. So then he turns into a snob. In other words, he doesn't turn into a snob, but he has to wear fancy clothes and go to salons and all this. And it's the same with a book called Père Goriot by Balzac. It's the same thing, where this young guy thinks he has to try and fit in with the upper classes or the jet set or whatever you want to call them, like even bigger arseholes. And so obviously people feel a sense of class, class inferiority. So if you're already feeling inferior about yourself, you're not gonna survive with those kinds of people, because they really have got like millions of pounds and businesses and privilege, and they lose them and they gamble it all the way on horses, but they still have got it and you haven't. The thing is, in Great Expectations, he gets his money from somebody who he helped save right at the start of the book, a so-called convict who wasn't really a convict. He wasn't put in jail for any offence or crime. He was an innocent man who managed to escape from jail, and the little kid helps him in a churchyard by bringing him some food, and so he never forgets that. He thinks the convict, I forget his name now, he loves that kid because that kid, the kid was innocent and just helped him, and it was like the biggest help he ever got because it meant he escaped from Britain. Sounds good, doesn't it? And he went to Australia, and then he makes a fortune. Well, it's a book, isn't it? So he makes his fortune sheep farming or something, and then he manages to send this kid some money every week and give this kid money befitting a kind of young gentleman, which is like really one of the aristocracy, like a young lord or a viscount or a duke, or there's a gradation of them, and Dickens never mentions them really because he keeps out of it because he knows he'll get into bother with the establishment. And Dickens is very much a weasel piss writer because he never has a go at imperialism. He knows if he writes about anti-imperialistic things, he'll probably get his books closed down. He'll probably get the publishers what publish his works, and then he's not going to even be a writer, so then he'll just have to go back into a bottle factory and work for virtually nothing washing bottles. And that's Dickens really, understood. He's a weasel pisser. He's okay, and they love him in Britain, but he never had a go at British foreign policy. He was a weasel pisser, meaning he was gutless. He had no guts. But of course he'd lose his whole livelihood, so he's a hypocrite, because he probably did oppose imperialism. Anyway, it's now 7 minutes 32, and in another 2.5 minutes we're going to get round to, this is like the conscience of Britain, the history of Britain. It could be anywhere, Holland, France, Germany. They're all kind of the same, once a business class decides it's going to start nosing into Saudi Arabia, then it will. And then they're going to have a lot of trouble. Excuse me. Now, I wasn't meaning to talk about this. I was meaning to tell you the sort of, it's like the story of my life, So now I'm with this Liverpudlian called Scouser, and we're going down through France to go work on the beach. And that's the end of the train journey. Was interesting, and then we got back to the campsite, and the next day got our donuts and ice creams and started selling. I can't remember. But when you get there, you kind of do see the rich and famous of the world turning up. You do see bankers from Switzerland, because I had a meal with them, and they were German speaking and they couldn't speak any French, so I was talking to the wives in French, and one of the girls was, I forget her name, she fancied me, or she kind of likes me, so they invited me back for a meal, and we had like spaghetti bolognese and wine, and it's just one day in my life, but it was brilliant. It was a great experience. We had a lot of fun. I didn't get anywhere with that girl, even though she was quite attractive. She had a broken leg, I remember now, she had her leg in a pot. But we were kind of all foreigners together, like people from across the world in a place that's alien to them, kind of like south of France. Like somebody who's from the south of France, who's from Port Grimaud, maybe doesn't find Port Grimaud very interesting because I lived there. And I kind of got to go to work, and people are talking to them in French, and it's Just like people talk to me in English, like your boss is your boss, and you get fed up of that and you look for another job, and you might start working on the boats to begin with. And then from working on the boats you might work in a bar. But it's a lot more romantic if it's in the south of France than if it's like in Leeds, even though I did work in Leeds and do all that kind of thing. And in fact I enjoyed it. I enjoyed every minute, really enjoyed every minute of every job I've done. Can't say I really disliked working at all. I loved it. Because you've got to make yourself like it, because if you don't, you're not going to survive. So, and then when you get to 56, like me, old geezer, you start writing a book. And I've tried this lots of times. I've typed it, put it on paper, I've typed it up one sheet at a time, and then had 50 sheets, all with little short stories, and I meant to send it to a publisher, but I couldn't take the rejection. I didn't want to have like a letter saying, no, we're not interested, thank you, thank you very much, and we know where you're coming from, but we don't think it'll sell, and it probably wouldn't, so you got to kind of guard your feelings, your emotions if you do anything, Like there's people what write a song, they won't strum out a little tune because they just don't want to tell people about the way they feel about things. They keep the feelings to themselves. And I'm forever saying to people, try and get your emotions out some way, because you're only going to end up repressed. You're only going to end up, but live a life of not really controlling the world. And you can control the world when you're an artist, because you only got to look at Monet and Manet and Renoir and Jean-Claude Van Damme, whatever, Jean-Jacques Rousseau or Jean-Jacques Burnel. All these people have got names because they went on stage, like with the Stranglers, or they've written books, or so they're remembered in history. They've written, and of course you get people like politicians, like William Hague's written a book about William Pitt the Younger, but it'll be a pile of crap. It won't be any good. I just can tell, and I wouldn't read it and I wouldn't buy it because I know he's trying to sell it. And he's done a bit of research, and it could be spot on. It could be one of the most brilliant historical analyses going. But it didn't interest me. I've read about William Pitt, Pitt the Younger, Pitt the Elder, a little bit, but not. I didn't really need to go any further into it. Well, the reason why is because then you're reading about William Pitt and not expressing your life, expressing your thoughts about things. Instead you're reading about him, but it's not that you're reading about him, it's that it's been pushed on you through history books or through advertising, so the idea of this is to avoid advertising and give people an insight into my life. And now I got to Port Grimaud, and then from Port Grimaud we used to go down to the beach and go in the sea and swim around and then float. It was quite salty, Mediterranean, and someone will say, no it's not, scientists or something will say, we've measured it, it's not a lot of salt. It is if you get your mouth in there. Seawater is salty, but it does you real good. After about 4 days or 5 days of going in the sea, your body feels a lot better. You feel really healthy, and that's because the salt has cleansed your skin properly. Whereas what you get here in Britain and everywhere else, but not at the seaside, everywhere else apart from the seaside. People who live at the seaside who actually go in the sea quite regularly and have a swim around, they say they live longer and they're healthier and everything because they're kind of cleansing the skin and they're taking on the elements, and I ain't done that for ages, so I'll probably drop dead tomorrow. And that's the fun. The fun of writing this, the fun of telling you all this, is to digress, because that's where the fun is. The tangent. When you go off at the tangent, that's when it's there. I'm just looking at this. Somebody's written their name is Doddle O'Doddle. Doddle Oddle. Doddle Oddle, she's called. On YouTube. I might just subscribe, just for fun, just because it's a funny name. And it's that kind of thing, when people are controlling the conversation, when it's public relations companies and stuff, they're trying to control an agenda and package some information to you a certain way over a sustained period, over 6 months, a year, whatever, and they get paid to do it. I was watching Noam Chomsky last night, video by him in a university in Canada, and they were just telling you about all that, telling you about American politics and Obama, and basically the richest third of Americans control government policy. There's nothing to do with democracy, and everything Obama does has been told to him and made, packaged to him, and that he must conform. So what that means is that anybody can start letting a business go bust if it's in the right business, like banking, and they know that they'll just have to bail them out with taxpayers' money. So they take the tax and then hand it all over to some business that should be allowed to go bust, but instead they keep them going, and that way the business is not actually running like a proper business. It's been it's been manipulated and kept afloat as a business when it's not really viable or feasible, and so would have gone bust, which would have been good, because then somebody else will come into the market and set up a bank and have a go at doing some banking and probably do it better. But and then it came out about Microsoft, and Microsoft is really just a part of IBM, said Chomsky, which I never realised, because people get it into thick heads that Bill Gates did it all himself. He didn't. He's an offshoot of IBM, and IBM got its money from the American government. So it's Microsoft and all this computers is fucking subsidised by the American taxpayer, but to make money, to obviously to bring in billions into American treasury. Well, I don't think it has, because I think they've wasted a lot of their money, and because they handed so much money to banks, the banks have just stolen it, basically. And that's weak government. That's government and police and CIA and FBI not being allowed to prosecute a lot of these thieves because of deals with the government, because they're being told not to. So, like, the attorney generals of all the big cities in America are part of political parties usually, and if they're not, then they have to make a decision to prosecute, like a bank, the headquarters of a bank. But they haven't been doing it, so they just can't be bothered. Now the thing is if this attorney general or any of them's got a load of shares in that in that bank, then they're just getting like a huge payback off the taxpayer, huge. So they just bank it, don't they? Stick it in their account, or send it off to a Swiss account, or put it somewhere else, put it under the mattress. It don't matter, because if someone's paying you millions and your company's going bust, and then you just go to the government and say, I'd like another 5 billion, and they hand you 5 billion, and then you give yourself a couple of million in bonuses, you can't go wrong, can you? But everybody else can't do that. That's the thing, is that they have a special privileged position, being able to rip off the taxpayer and the government. And that's what Noam Chomsky was saying last night, and what I'm saying today. Because I mention this because I'm a politics graduate. I don't fiddle around with like shit and stupidity. Fiddle around with the big issues. And because like me and Scouse, when we're on the train going through south of France, 19 years of age, we'll have got talking about something like this, or some issue, or some aspect of education, and you know, we might talk for hours and hours about stuff, or some writer would talk about Steinbeck. And one day, he was reading Steinbeck, and this guy said, "Wow, are you reading that book?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Wow," he says, "we've got that on our syllabus at Brighton College." He was like at University of Brighton, or call it Brighton College. They're like teacher training college though, so it was no mug, this other guy, you know. And he says, "Oh, I wouldn't like to read that, but it's on our syllabus, you know, we have to read it." And Scouse was just reading it for pleasure, you know, but because you don't just read for pleasure, you're reading for curiosity, you're reading because somebody said, "Hey, this is a good book, try this." And really, you pass around your information and the world hasn't changed. It's completely the same as it always was. The French are sticking the nose in everywhere, sending the military all over the place. They were doing it when I was in south of France, because we saw the sailors at, where is it, San Rafael, and they said, hello, they said, about 5 of them, and we got talking. They said, "Oh, where are you from?" "England." And "Oh, what are you doing?" "Oh, we're sailors. We're at that military college there, Naval Academy," whatever. So then I said, "Oh, where are you going?" "To Djibouti." And they went, "Oh, fucking hell, how do you know that? How do you know we're going to Djibouti?" It's just something we did when I was doing history. I remember a history teacher giving us a test about, you know, French colonies, British colonies, and you just remember because it's like a funny name, isn't it? Djibouti. It's a strange kind of name. It's near Aden, so you had like Aden was British and Djibouti was French, and both of the bastards wanted to hold on to those bits of territory because they were obviously drilling for oil there, you know, and they wanted to control it, and that's why they had to send the military out there to make sure the natives didn't get hold of any of that oil or whatever. So yeah, you come back to politics only grudgingly, because I don't really want to go on about politics. So I wanted to get back onto this story, and there is no story in a sense. There's no start, middle or end. It's a bit like a rap, you know, it's like a rapper talking about something. So I'll have to end there because this is 23 minutes, and then we'll get on with the next part of it, and that will be just probably about when we used to go swimming off the rocks, you know, diving in the water and then saying, "Hey, should we swim up to those big luxury yachts there and go get on board and have some free champagne?" Just shit that you thought was big when you were young, you know, you thought it was like, oh, a lavish lifestyle or something interesting and different and amazing to do, or something that millionaires did and you didn't. And the truth is, it is something millionaires do and I don't do, most people don't do, and they won't even invite you on board the yacht. So you're not going to go on the yacht at all, and in fact you're going to swim towards it and think, I'm not going, I'm coming back. And you go on the beach, pick up your donuts and your ice cream and start selling them again, and that's your lunch break gone, because you've got 20 minutes away from selling, and you better get selling again because you've got to get your rent money, and that's it. And I'll stop there. Chapter 7, the rent money in the south of France.